Hello and welcome back to Football by the Numbers. I am John Flame, your host. I am joined by my two best friends, Andrew, future former professional midfielder, soccer legend and prodigy, and of course, Will the Wall, goalkeeper extraordinaire, the brick wall at the back. Will, how are you doing?
With no emotion. I want no emotion, Will.
Mixed feelings, guys. Sunday League, we're in a bit of a drought, 2 losses in a row. Hopefully we turn around this weekend. But on the bright side, St. Louis City SC season tickets for supporters section went on sale finally.
Yes! Here we go!
They did. I'm super excited about those supporter tickets. They're going not too expensive too for like 20 home games. Really awesome, good deal. We should caveat this with the first of our 2 losses in a row was the championship game. So we were runner-up in the league. And then the second loss in a row was because half of our team, including our future former prodigy, Andrew, did not show up because he decided to take a Florida vacation in the middle of October just randomly. Speaking of bums that don't like to show up for games, Andrew, how are you, bud?
Fantastic. And it's not that I don't like to show up for games, but Florida, come on, I had to take the opportunity when I could.
Fair enough, especially given the chillier weather we've been having, but
I know
think
it was 90 down there. I'm struggling to.
Yeah, it was. I'm sure you're struggling to adapt here. With you on the team, I think we really could have taken over that other team. I mean, they were not as fit. We had to meld in some substitutes that weren't really familiar with us. We didn't have chemistry. But speaking of being taken over, I want to talk to you guys today about the Newcastle takeover. So, let me just give you a little bit of background knowledge. This Newcastle takeover has kind of been in the works for a couple of years now. It was supposed to be last summer. They took it over. I don't know if it was Mike Ashley, the former owner, who didn't really want to sell because of the COVID market, or if the Saudis backed out. But essentially, the Saudi Investment Fund, which is 88% owned by Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and the other 20% is owned by proxy of Mohammed bin Salman, even though they said it's not allowed to be owned by him. He's a kleptocrat. Essentially, he nationalized all the Saudi oil fields and uses the wealth for his own benefit. He's got multiple human rights violations from Human Rights Watch and other human rights activist organizations. And he's also a murderer. He's murdered many people, including in 2018, a Washington Post journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, in a Saudi embassy in Istanbul by dismembering him and boiling his body parts in acid for being an outspoken dissident. This is the new owner of Newcastle fans, but at the same time, Newcastle fans rejoice because in the late 90s and early 2000s, they were a really big club, and then Mike Ashley came in and took over and completely ruined the club. So I think they can still rejoice at this club takeover and the success and the money that the Saudis are going to be invested in, but also protest the owner. But since we have 2 fans of a club, Chelsea, owned by a kleptocratic Russian oligarch, alleged of murder and human rights violations, I want to hear from you hypocrites. What do you guys think of this takeover?
I mean, ultimately, it comes from money. Money buys anything and everything, right? Who cares? When you have a certain amount of wealth, there's as we can see in any country, there's no right or wrong. It's just where do your dollar signs go?
To caveat this is Andrew's opinion and Andrew's opinion only. Money does not buy all. It does not supersede morals. And the highest dollar should not buy it. Look at the Bundesliga. They do it right. They have fan ownership. That's much better in my opinion. This comes from, once again,
you didn't say to tell you what the right decision was to make.
I asked you what your opinion was. And if your opinion is that money buys all, then
my opinion is I'm an American U.S. citizen and have zero ties to any European club or whoever buys them. I just love the team.
So before I move on to Will, I'll take that as you're an outside supporter and you're eager to see more competition in the league and added money. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt there.
I don't even know if I'm excited about that. I honestly think it was kind of unnecessary.
All right, Will, your opinion. What do you think of the Newcastle takeover?
Yeah, I don't want to overlook any of the shady stuff that the ownership has pulled in the past. But on the bright side, I'm excited for Newcastle. They're always finishing in the bottom half of the table. Super boring, never relegated, but they always stay up. And a team with deep pockets that can compete with Man City and Chelsea. And
they don't have pockets. The pocket is never ending. There's no such thing as pockets to their new owner.
Yeah, the Saudi investment fund, just to put this in perspective, I think Chelsea's owner, Roman Abramovich, is worth about $10 billion. The United Arab Emirates owners, Sheikh Mansour over at Manchester City, and his city investment group is worth about $30 billion. The Saudi investment fund, the private investment fund, is worth $350 billion. So yeah, this is a little bit of a bottomless pit. And in fairness, I believe it is either the FA, the Football Association of England, has imposed stricter financial regulations so that the Saudis cannot self-advertise and self-sponsor their team, essentially saying like, okay, Saudi Airlines is going to be the sponsor of Newcastle United, and it's going to be a $150 billion deal so they can just go crazy with all their purchases. You can no longer do that. They put a temporary pause on that with an alleged permanent ban. I believe the City Investment Group did that with Etihad Airways, and they self-sponsored a few years ago to avoid financial fair play as well.
Let me just mention, please provide some sources of who could outbid $350 billion.
I didn't say that there was any source that could outbid $350 billion, but it's all down to the investment into the club.
Money buys anything.
Except for Bayern Munich. Anyway, so let's move on to the same club that's not 50+1 owned by the fans and therefore inferior, Newcastle. So let's talk Newcastle. Let's pretend that the human rights violations don't exist, which is pretty easy when we tunnel vision on football. And let's talk about how to improve the Newcastle team as it is now. Now, currently they sit 19th place with 0 wins from, I believe it is 7 games now. Steve Bruce, after his 100th match in charge, was just fired from the team, which, according to all the Geordies and everyone in Newcastle, is a fantastic thing. And according to anybody with 2 eyes and a sensibility about football, thinks is a good thing, because he's a horrible manager. He doesn't have the backing of the players. He's lost the locker room. He's constantly just stagnating right there in the bottom quarter of the table between 15th and 17th place, where he won't get relegated, but he's not going to do anything good for the team. So boys, who do you think's going to take over as manager? Do you think they're going to go all in, balls to the wall, try and get a winning manager to get him as high up the table as possible? Or do you think they go for somebody who can grow with the club? Or do you think they just go for like a big Sam Allardyce to avoid relegation for this first time and then switch on to somebody else as the club grows?
The best move would be, kind of an up-and-coming coach to grow with the club over time. This will definitely take, time for this team to improve. So I think a name like Steven Gerrard would be one of the best possible solutions. Lampard's name comes up as well. Obviously, not the same level of success that Gerrard has had with Rangers. But I feel like the club will go with more of a splashy name to get people's attention, somebody who's had more success over time. So I think, Antonio Conte's name will likely come up. Maybe Roberto Martinez's name always comes up as well for openings. But I feel like he's probably happy where he's at right now, rather than going to Newcastle. So I would put my money on Antonio Conte to get.
Since Antonio Conte was at Juventus, he's really preferred that 3-5-2 formation, which I believe Newcastle run more often than not. With the new Saudi board and complete overhaul of their back office, yeah, they might not be overhauling it, but I think eventually we'll see some changes there. And I think Antonio Conte would have a lot of backing from the board. I don't know. Obviously, Newcastle can now afford him, but I don't know that he takes it based on the current. I just don't see Antonio Conte coaching John Joe Shelby and Joel Linton this season, but he could, because he has that project, he has the backing of the board, and he is notoriously known for quitting when the board don't support his decisions. So I do like that. Do you really think Frank Lampard is a good enough coach to make it at Newcastle and make it at this project? Because I think he made it to like 7th or 8th place before Thomas Tuchel took over. Is he really good enough to make it at Newcastle? I would think that Chelsea, with the talent that they would have some level of success behind it anyway, and you can't, if they're not going to get relegated, so there's only a lowest point that they can go. Do you really think Frank Lampard is that manager that can grow with the club?
I mean, I think he's the young coach and a big name. I don't think he's there yet. Obviously, he had some early success with Chelsea and things kind of fell apart. I don't think he's the right man or someone they're going to seriously pursue, unless all they care about is, the big name of a great former player.
And even then, I think Steven Gerrard, like you said, would be a better pick for that. Those are some excellent names. Andrew, do you have anything to add? Any other coaching name? Greg Berhalter, perhaps?
If I'm the club, if I'm the club, I'm going the complete opposite way. I'm finding my player that I really want to sign, and I'm seeing who he wants me to bring in. John, you and I kind of talked about this over the phone. I'm calling Mbappe. I'm calling any player that's unhappy with where they're at, and I'm finding out what kind of coach they want, what style they want, who meshes with it. Because ultimately, when you're building from the ground up, you got to make your superstars happy. That's what's going to make the biggest splash. And you know they're looking to make a splash. And I just don't know if signing a big coach name is the right way for them to go about it. I think if they sign one or two stars, they got deep pockets, one or two stars to bring a coach in with them, you might have a little bit bigger of a jump start than just trying to find a big coach that makes a big name.
That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective too. I had Ralph Rangnick, the coach who became director of football over at RB Leipzig, who is now in Russia. He took that coach. He's got a lot of experience in getting teams out of the relegation zone as well as getting teams promoted. He's really good at taking talent and just really grinding out talent, finding some low-cost, multi-skilled, role-playing players that he can use to further advance his team and play a certain specific style, Caden Clark, play a certain style of football to get where the team needs to be. You saw that with RB Leipzig before the Julian Nagelsmann days. You see that wherever he goes. I think he would be an excellent pick for the first year or two and then promote him to a director of football position and really build a team around him. The other coach I went with was Graham Potter. I mean, we see how well he's been doing at Brighton. Last year, the statistics played it out, but they didn't have a goal scorer to really finish off all those chances. Now they do. You see where they're at. They're in 5th. I think he's taken Brighton probably about as far as he can, getting them into 5th. And I know it's early doors. I know we could see something happen with Brighton. Maybe they qualify for Europe or something like that. But I could see Newcastle being the project with the investments, him getting the investment backing and whatever he needs from the board to really push forward and get Newcastle to be the powerhouse that it used to be. So, now that we've got managers assorted, let's move on to transfers. Now, transfers, due to financial fair play, the clubs cannot spend more than 3 times their loss for the last 3 years cumulative plus a certain amount. So for Newcastle, I did the math, it's about 190 million to 200 million pounds that they have to spend. Let's go through some transactions. Let's go through some players here. Who do you bring in? And we'll do one for each position, one goalkeeper, one center back or defender, one midfielder, and one forward. If you have more than one that you want to say, great, say it. But let's do one per position, starting with goalkeeper. Who do you bring in January to help this team out and try and at least avoid relegation? Will, who do you have at goal?
Yeah, I'll kick things off with the backup for Man U, Dean Henderson, back behind David De Gea this year. Just a couple seasons removed from his time at Sheffield where he was a starter and he had 13 clean sheets. This man is incredible. He deserves to be a starter in the Premier League, and Newcastle's had a lot of trouble keeping the ball out of the net this year. It would probably take a lot to woo Man U to move on from him. Obviously, it's super valuable to have the best backup goalkeeper in the league.
I think a loan option would be good for him just to get some playing time and to continue with that. And it's a good short-term solution too. Maybe with an option to buy. I think it'd probably take about 30 to 40 million though to pry Dean Henderson away from Manchester United with the form that David De Gea has been in. Andrew, who do you have for goalkeeper?
I'm going to butcher his name. He's over at AC Milan.
Mike Maignan?
Is that how you say his?
Yeah, Maignan. Maignan, yeah, Mike
yes.
Maignan.
Yes,
Save you
yes,
there.
Sir.
Yeah, that's an interesting pick. He just arrived at AC Milan. What makes you say Mike Maignan?
I think he's somebody that can be persuaded to move. I mean, AC Milan is a quality team, but at the same time, what's better than being made the face goalkeeper of a club that's being built? I mean, how old is he? He's 20.
He's pretty young. I think he's like 20,
25,
26.
Somewhere in there. So he's young. When I watch AC Milan play 2 weeks ago, I felt that he was like, he wants to be a star. He could be playing in Europe, which in Europe is playing for Newcastle in England. What's higher than playing the Premier League?
I think you bring up a valid point too. He was really a diamond in the rough that flew under the radar after the departure of Donnarumma. We've seen that. I think AC Milan's in second place in Serie A now. They don't have a win in 3, unfortunately, in their group, but they did pull a really hard group with Porto, Liverpool, and Atletico Madrid. So they were in for a pretty rough time. They do have the financial constraints too that they're still trying to recover from, so he's probably not on high wages. Newcastle, obviously, I think the biggest thing that they're going to have to spend on is not transfer fees, but on wages to try and pry people away, bring them in and say, essentially sell them on this project that they're doing.
On what you're building, what
Yeah.
you're going to build.
Essentially this rebuild. And to do that, I think there's got to be a financial incentive.
You're going to be the face of the club. I mean, that's what they have to sell. They have to sell that you're going to be the face of the club. You're going to make money and you're going to be the guy. Like whoever we want to start, those are going to be our posters on the stadium. That's what you're going to see. And then some of the clubs that these guys are already at, that's hard to do. I mean, they have history. There's guys everywhere that are already on posters. I just think it's a good option that he could be. My second one, I got to throw him in there just because I got to toot the U.S. horn. Stefan, over there at Man City.
Fair enough. Yeah.
What better project than a project? I think the thing that he lacks the most is playing. I think he lacks playing. And the thing that Newcastle is going to provide to Stefan that Man City doesn't provide is the opportunity to make mistakes without the pressure. You make a mistake at Man City, you're costing them something. You make a mistake at Newcastle while they're rebuilding, there's nothing at stake. They're at the lowest of low. They're burning the stake. They're selling everybody. They got a new owners. Like, what's more free than playing for a club that has no expectations, no options, and are just going to go up?
Yeah, I don't agree with you on the Zach Steffen pick. I'm biased. I like the pick. I think it's creative. But if it were me personally and I was the director of football there, I'd rather stick with Darlow or with Dubravka. I think they're better keepers than Zach Steffen. I think in 19th with 3 points on the board with 3 draws from 7, you do have a lot to play for, and those mistakes can cost you. Now, as you move up, it could change until January with a new manager and new owners coming in and a new style of play. We could see him higher up. And then I would agree with you on the Zach Steffen where goals don't really matter, and if you're a project, we can rebuild. But I think Dubravka is a better pick, and just sticking with him than taking Zach Steffen. But I like the creativity of the pick.
Had a good performance this past weekend, filling in for Henderson.
So maybe I'm wrong.
He's so young. He's just so young. He's just so young.
He is very young. He's very green.
There's so much potential in there. There's so much potential, and I just think if he had a freer environment, I haven't seen him play a game that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think if he gets more playing time, he will develop and he will truly blossom into a good goalkeeper. I just personally would rather play it safe if I was the director of football at Newcastle. But let me know if I'm wrong. Leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get alerted to all of our videos. And let me know if I'm wrong about Zach Steffen. Is he a good fit for the Newcastle? He can definitely grow with some playing time and with the club. How big can he grow? I don't know. Leave your opinion down below. I went with Walter Benitez from OGC Nice. He's got an incredible save percentage. I think it's about 85% so far this year. He's got Nice sitting in 4th. He's got an average goals against per 90 right now of 0.56 across 9 matches. He's only let 5 in, and he's got 27 shots on target against with 23 saves. He's really been doing an incredible job. I think he'd be a good fit. He's not too old either. I think he's about 28 years old. The Argentinian keeper, we've seen him a couple of times. I believe he's been replaced now on the Argentinian national team by Emi Martinez over at Aston Villa, which he's been pretty lights out there. So, he could see his spot back in there. He's not a project. It's essentially rebuilding the spine of Newcastle is what I would be trying to do. Having a good solid core of players that you could build around that are going to be quality, that are going to be reliable, that maybe can grow with the club. Walter Benitez can maybe grow with the club. He's going to provide that solid foundation that you need in the spot that Newcastle are at right now. So, moving on, let's move quickly on to center back. So, who did you guys have at center back? Will, let's go to you first since you're prepared.
I've got John Anthony Brooks, center back at Wolfsburg. He's 28 years old. He's going to be out of contract after this year. Maybe Wolfsburg wants to keep him to help mentor future teammate Ricardo Pepi. John Anthony Brooks has obviously been very hot and cold over the past year, been very in form with his club, not in form with his national team.
I'll say.
That's about all the bullet points I have for John Anthony Brooks. Just a little marketing. Need an American in there to get those American fans to watch our games on.
Andrew, what do you think of Will's pick of John Brooks going to Newcastle? How do you think he'd do there?
I think that's a great pick. I mean, it's the best pick ever. No, not John Brooks. Come on now.
Who's your pick?
I don't have a pick.
They don't need defense. All scoring.
Yeah, I mean, their defense is kind of solid. Those aren't the positions I'm most worried about. You know what, Andrew?
If I could go back to a defender that I would like to see play for Newcastle, if it was the summer, it would be Ramos. I think that would be a good signing for them. Somebody that's
Sergio Ramos?
Yes. If we could go back and redo this, that's who I think. That's the type of player I think they need. They need somebody that's going to be gritty and towards the end of their career at center back. Because you don't need a whole bunch of young guys playing defense. That's when things go wrong.
All right. Well, Andrew, I'm going to banter you all episode because I don't agree. Bringing in a 34, 35-year-old injury-prone, who's going to cost a ton of money in transfer fees and even more in wages. Disagree. I don't think you ball out like that. I think you go for 2 center backs who are out of contract in the summer. One's from the Bundesliga and one is from back home. You go for Matthias Ginter over at Borussia Mönchengladbach. He's got 6 months left on his contract in January, so you could pick him up for the cheap or sign a pre-contract deal and get him for free in the summer. Ginter, you get that flex of center back and right back. He's performed really well for Germany, so he's got some international experience. He's really rock solid. Again, building that spine down the back. He's playing for a team that is in Mönchengladbach. They're all right. They're not fantastic in my opinion, but he's still a good lockdown center back, and he has the flexibility. Same thing, James Tarkowski over at Burnley. I think he provides a really good Premier League experience. He's pretty young. He's like 28 years old, so he's right in the peak. You get him for free. You sign him for a large wage. You just get him in there to solidify your spine. Again, solidify that back line, keep some balls out of the net. We are running out of time, so let's quickly go through some midfielders, which I think we could do more than one in the midfield department and be safe because their midfield, it is crap. It is in the mud.
I got Paul Pogba. This is really going to make a dent in their budget, but I think these owners want a star. Does Paul Pogba want to be the guy?
I don't think he does.
Not at a project, not without European football.
I don't think he does.
It's a good shout because he's out of contract in 6 months.
What do you think about Frankie de Jong?
I think he probably just signed a new contract at Barcelona. But I think he'd be a great...
Yeah, but Barcelona's in such a money turmoil. Like, if Newcastle offered you enough to take him off...
I think it's going to be a lot of money, even though Barcelona's in financial turmoil. I think Pedri and Ansu Fati and Frankie de Jong and Gavi, their new midfielders, I think they're...
You don't think they're moving?
I don't think they're moving, no. I think that's a good shout. I think that'd be an absolutely fantastic player that you sign first and you make a statement of like, yeah, we're here and we're going to make this happen and we're going to do a big deal. We're going to make a big deal about this. I have a couple of them. I have Houssam Aouar over at Lyon. He'd be a fantastic attacking midfielder to link up the midfield with the offense, which you see that after all these games that Newcastle played, they just can't get any freaking offense going unless it comes from Alan St. Maximin. And I think to maximize St. Maximin and Callum Wilson, you bring in Aouar. He's got 3.6 shots per game, 1.9 key passes per 90, 1 goal every 178 minutes, so he's really contributing. He's got that creative force, 85% of passes completed, 3 dribbles per 90, and with as aggressive as he is in the passing department, I think he'd be a really, really good statement. He's also only 23, and Lyon was begging for somebody to take him off their hands last year. This is a good signing for them. Could also say players like Leandro Paredes, who cannot get a minute over at PSG because Verratti's healthy and he's playing out of his mind. So that'd be a good big name signing. I don't think you can sign all 3 of these players at once. I also said Florian Grillitsch. That'd be a real Ralph Rangnick signing. He's good off the ball with 5 tackles and interceptions per game. He'd be an upgrade on John Joe Shelby. His passes forward are excellent, which I believe he makes 6.5 forward passes per 90. And he doesn't dribble often, but he is secure in the ball, so I believe he attempts less than 1 per game, but completes 70% of them. So Florian Grillitsch, big, under 27, center midfielder, good defensive midfielder over at Hoffenheim. I think he'd be a great... Let's move on to forward. the most
I want to give a shout to Weston
position.
McKennie first.
Weston McKennie. There we go.
I mean, we know Juventus is, trying to move him. There's been talks with West Ham, and we also know he was interested in coming to the Premier League a couple years ago.
He's really out of favor under Maximiliano Allegri.
Even though he just came out yesterday saying he likes him.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. He's a great coach. I mean, he's a great coach, but when he doesn't play you, kind of a big deal. I think 25 million could pull him from Juventus. It adds marketability to the United States too. He's a great player. I think what he needs to work on is the passing per match. He only averages about 35 passes per match right now, which is I think the average of the Premier League is like 50 to 60. So he would need to up that.
I'm gonna counter you and say he needs to up his fitness. His underlining problem is his fitness. Yes. If he was fitter, he'd have more passes. He'd be on the ball more. That's his problem right now. And we learned that with the United States. I mean, in between games, he got in trouble because he went out and partied. He's just being too much of a little boy in a man's game, and he's got to grow up a little bit before he can really solidify himself into the greats of the U.S.
I think you're absolutely right. Moving on very quickly, forwards. Who do you guys got? Andrew, do you want to go first this time, or are you underprepared again?
So totally out of left field, I'm going to throw out my boy that I always mess up. We've talked about him many a times. My Belgium striker Doku, who I always seem to think is somebody other than what he actually is.
Yeah.
But Jeremy,
he doesn't play at Arsenal. He does not play at Arsenal.
No, he does not. He plays at, I don't remember, Rennes. He plays at Rennes. And I mean, he's 18 years old. That could be a very fun signing for them. He was explosive when I saw him play with Belgium. I mean, he's got unbelievable amounts of speed. He's got tons of potential. He's probably cheap.
I don't think he's cheap, but imagine seeing Jeremy Doku on the right and Alan St. Maximin on the left, just blitzing down the field. Will, we have a very short amount of time left. Who you got?
Yeah, I got a couple old geezers. I got Luis Suarez and Gareth Bale at 34 each.
Oh, man.
Hey,
Gareth
Suarez.
Bale's not a bad shout. Suarez isn't either.
Suarez showed he could still find the back of the net the last year with Atletico Madrid. Gareth Bale, maybe not so interested in playing soccer anymore and just cashing checks,
and playing golf.
That's why he plays golf, and then he checks into the international team, makes some money, and then leaves.
Yeah, I think Luis Suarez averaged like a goal involvement a game last year for Atletico Madrid. Sucks for you, Barcelona. Shows what you know.
Can we talk about Griezmann? He's on loan right now. That's a possibility.
Yeah, I think it's an obligation to buy from Atletico Madrid. Otherwise, that's not a bad shout. I said somebody else from... I have so many players here that I could choose from. You could say Martial, the 26-year-old center forward from Manchester United, who's out of form because of Ronaldo. The up-and-coming Mason Greenwood. He's third in the pecking order. You've got Gerard Moreno, who scored like 40 goals last year for Villarreal, and they still finished like 8th in the table. I mean, he's a shining star in what's otherwise a garbage pile. Luka Jovic, out of favor at Real Madrid because Karim Benzema is, playing like a Ballon d'Or contender. He's really playing absolutely crazy. Dusan Vlahovic out of Fiorentina, he's like dying to get out of that club, and I think like 40 million will take that away. I don't know if he comes to Newcastle this early on because it's still like a very much so work in progress. He could be a good shout. Alexander Lacazette's out of contract in the summer, so he could be a good shout. Speaking of geezers coming in, he'd be a good 10, 15 goal a season striker, just like Callum Wilson, and Callum Wilson gets injured all the time. So speaking of time, that's about all the time we have. Any last thoughts or any plugs, boys? I think we've covered a lot. Let's end on this. Pick one player, or maybe even two, that you bring in for 50 million this January, which is what Newcastle said their budget was.
I go after Declan Rice.
Okay, I don't think 50 million's enough to get him, but that's not a bad shout.
I spend it all on Mbappe.
Okay, definitely horrible shout.
I'm kidding. I go Doku. That's who I'd go for. I think he's gonna be a star. I think he's going to be a huge star in the league one day, and that's tons of potential.
Who's your pick, John?
I think I go for Husam Alwar. I think he's the one. I think he provides the midfield threat, the goal scoring threat, the creativity, or somebody I didn't mention, Wilf Zaha. He'd be crazy playing on the other side of Alan St. Maximin. But this is what we think. This is how you improve Newcastle. Saudi owners, get on it. Listen to Football by the Numbers, promote our podcast, take our suggestions to heart, and improve Newcastle. This has been Football by the Numbers. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. We will see you next time. We are Football by the Numbers.